tantrum, reckless abandon, lost in a tangent, an overreaction, collateral damage, caught in a panic, don't know what happened, but this is the anthem, calling it hysteria.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to More Than a Muse podcast. I'm Sadie.
I'm Stauney, and happy March Madness. Not going to shut up about it.
I know. And we shouldn't. We still have 2 more weeks of March. We're taking advantage of it for as long as we can.
Of course. Merch is still up, still for sale. Highly recommend the hoodie. You can't take it off.
And I have my crew neck, and we also have the t-shirts available. I love our merch. I wear it all the time.
Yes.
And people are always like, oh my gosh, that's so cute. Where did you get it? I'm like, oh, just from this podcast. I don't have nothing to do with
podcast.
it. Cool podcast.
I also want to say the quality of this year's clothes are anything else. It's so good.
Yes.
So many people have commented on it and been like, oh my gosh, I love this material. It's so cozy. Wow, these t-shirts are perfect. They're phenomenal.
Yes.
So-
Sony did her due diligence of finding the best brands.
Yes.
And
They're really,
helping us
really
find
good.
the right fit and comfort and everything. We love it.
So check that out. And then today we get to talk about women getting mad and causing riots and revolting against the government. That's inspiring.
It is inspiring to see all of the times that women have come together in protest and how it spans all around the world through all centuries, actually.
Yes,
And it was really inspiring to learn about all of it.
definitely. Of course, there's been a few that we've talked about before that we won't cover a whole lot. Like last year for March Madness, we talked a lot about the women's suffrage movement. That, of course, was a major time period when women rioted and revolted and caused change. And the Me Too movement.
Yes.
Those were both very important. However, we are focusing on a lot of international ones and ones from history in this one, which was really fun, actually, to see what a global thing this is and just how many instances we could find. And we're only covering, there's so many more, too, that were just even little side notes of, oh, yeah, women were the main ones behind this whole thing.
Yeah.
It was very
It's
cool.
inspiring. Something about women, they just know how to march together and they know how to organize.
Maybe part of it is that, like, we are socially conditioned as women to put up with so much crap that when it gets to a certain point, maybe we just snap.
True. And
Yeah.
also, too, I feel like we've talked about how, like, women are often, like, the kin keepers. Is that what we talked about?
Yeah.
They are the ones who are so much more focused on, like, community because they feel like that's, like, their job to do that, whereas men won't take on those roles. And I wonder if this is, like, a benefit to that, where it's, like, they are the ones trying their best to uphold community. And so then, therefore, when they need community, we have people that we can rally with, which is really cool.
I would agree. It's very incredible. And I'm very excited to talk about all of them.
Me too. Let's just
Yeah.
kick it off. So this first instance isn't a historical. It is historical, but it's actually a play where this was talked about. And it's all the way from ancient Greek, 411 BCE. And it's called Lysistrata, I believe is how you would say that, where this is a play by Aristophanes. I'm not as up to date on my Greek playwrights.
I think
will
it's
admit.
Aristophanes. That sounds more Greek.
Aristophanes. That sounds Greek to me. But this was first performed in 411 BCE, like I mentioned, in ancient Athens, and it presents one of the very earliest fictional accounts of women using protest to disrupt war and to assert a political agenda on this patriarchal society that they found themselves in. In this play, the character organizes a coalition of women from warring Greek city-states to stage a sex strike, refusing intimacy with their husbands until the Peloponnesian War ends. Which is, I don't know, that's just so crazy that this is happening literally centuries ago in ancient Greek of people talking about sex strikes. And also that they're like, oh, this would actually work. That's what they're thinking, and that's what we're thinking now. Wait, what's the only thing that could actually work? Maybe this.
I mean, and then
know?
it's crazy because it's, okay, this was fictional, like a fictional instance in a play, but I'm like, was it based on a real incident? Because there's been so many incidents since then that kind of follow this that we'll talk about, that it's like, where did he get the idea, though?
Yep. And in this play, they're initially reluctant, but the women's collective power grows as they seize the Acropolis, which is home to the state treasury. And it uses humor, satire, and just bodily autonomy challenge the men's authority. It's like a comedic play, but it obviously still provides a very strong critique of gender roles, war, political exclusion, and also portraying women as peacekeepers and political advocates, not just like passive domestic caretakers.
Mm-hmm.
And like you mentioned, it has a legacy where perhaps this is something that has happened many times since, whether or not this it was totally fictional or not in ancient Greek. It's something that's been continued to go on. Just a little quote from it, or a line, where Lysistrata, so that's the name of the woman, she says, "There are a lot of things about us women that sadden me, considering how men see us as rascals." And then another woman named Calony says, "As indeed we are." Which,
that's so good.
We could put that on a hoodie.
Oh, yeah.
Indeed we are.
Oh, we are rascals.
So it's really cool.
Good. Yeah, so this next one is the Women's March on Versailles, which is interesting to me because I feel like we focus on a lot of parts of the French Revolution. I don't know if I've heard specifically about this being the catapult for a lot of things. Very fun to read about. Anyway, it happened in France, obviously, in 1789. And it was also known as October Days or the Black March. And it was one of the most pivotal symbolic moments of the French Revolution. Obviously, the main cause of everything was that they did not have food. So there was a shortage and a really high cost of bread. And so the march began on October 5th in 1789 when a group of market women from Paris gathered in protest. As tensions rose, they were joined by thousands of others, including men and members of the National Guard who were equally angered by food scarcity, economic inequality, and the lavish excesses of the royal court. The crowd, now numbering in tens of thousands, armed themselves with weapons from the Hôtel de Ville and marched through the pouring rain to the Palace of Versailles, demanding food, justice, and political accountability. And although hunger was the original catalyst, it then quickly evolved into a revolutionary force. There was a lot of things going on then. The king was reluctant to endorse the reforms passed by the National Assembly. A lot of like decadent royal banquet stuff was happening, which was very insulting to the fact that the rest of the country was starving. The protesters demanded not only the redistribution of bread, but also the relocation of the king, queen, and the assembly to Paris, where they would be subject to the people's scrutiny. And so the whole idea then turned into dismantle the monarchy's isolation and ensure that the gains of the revolution would be protected under the watchful eye of the capital citizens. They made it to Versailles, and then they occupied the assembly, sent a delegation to confront King Louis. And although the king was like offering concessions, promising food, the crowd remained unconvinced, fearing that the queen's influence would reverse any progress. This is unfair. We've talked about Marie Antoinette as well. It always makes my heart hurt a little bit because she was literally a teenage girl. When we say, like, I'm just a girl, that is Marie Antoinette. She literally was just a girl.
What was she going to do?
She had no political power at all.
Yeah.
But a lot of things got blamed on her. And a lot of that was racism about Austria and a whole other... Anyway, lots of things happening. But tensions exploded the next morning when some of the protesters ended up breaching the palace, killing royal guards, and nearly reaching Marie Antoinette, the king, and the children. Only the timely arrival and mediation of the Marquis de Lafayette and the symbolic gestures of the royal family, they appeared on the palace balcony, like waving whatever to the people. It calmed the crowd temporarily. But obviously, the king had no choice at that point but to listen to the people and their demands. So on October 6th, the massive crowd triumphantly escorted the royal family and deputies back to Paris. And although it was a little bit celebratory at the moment, there was some violence. What kind of underscored the rest of the French Revolution. They had all of the royal guards' heads on pikes, which became a very common theme for the French Revolution. And then the king ended up being pretty much a prisoner in Tuileries Palace, I think is how you say it. And then the National Assembly soon followed. It shifted the seat of power to the capital, shattered the monarchy's perceived invincibility, was the main thing that the march was able to accomplish. They got to the king and queen. They almost killed them. Like, it literally proved that the wealthy weren't invincible to the masses. and redefined the role of popular action in governance. And that was the turning point of the revolution that led to the collapse of the French monarchy. And
Yes.
for the women who led it, their actions earned them lasting place in revolutionary history, called the Mothers of the Nation, proving that collective action, even from marginalized groups of people like women, could alter the course of an entire nation. And it did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the French Revolution didn't end there. Obviously, it is very bloody and long and horrific. But
Yes.
that did spur everything that happened after.
This next one is the Bread and Roses Strike from 1912 in the U.S. So this started in Lawrence, Massachusetts. And it was a very highly organized collaborative labor movement led largely by immigrant women that were textile workers. And something that I guess is interesting is I guess in textbooks, sometimes this is portrayed as like a spontaneous outburst, when in reality, it was something that was very intentional. I had never heard of this before in the context of it being a spontaneous outburst. But again, it's always just interesting to approach your history books with a critical eye, because you never know the agendas that they might have. But this strike was sparked by a recent Massachusetts law that reduced the work week for women and children from 56 to 54 hours. Wow, that is crazy. And also 54-hour work weeks. Oh my gosh. But anyways, mill owners responded by cutting workers' already meager pay. So that prompted outrage, of course. With support from groups like the Industrial Workers of the World, IWW, and the Italian Socialist Federation, the strike was carefully planned and executed, drawing on years of grassroots labor organizing, immigrant labor experience, and just strong ethnic community networks. Meetings were held in nearly 30 languages and had essential services like soup kitchens and childcare that were organized to sustain these strikers. Despite facing police, militia, and these powerful mill owners, workers maintained solidarity across nationalities and gender lines. And their efforts demonstrated how unity and strategy, not just set in emotion, were key to their success. And the strike challenged not only wage cuts and exploited working conditions, but also the broader inequalities imposed by industrial capitalism, making it a very powerful example of labor resistance, which I know all of those worker strikes that happened within that industrial revolution, I know that work was all incredible for, I was going to say, the workers' rights we have today, which sometimes feels like it's not the best situation to be in, but also going from 56 to 54 hours and then getting your pay drastically cut. Oh,
For a 2-hour cut. I'm
I know.
Okay.
Also,
Yeah.
54 hours, that is so much time to be somewhere working.
So much work, especially in a factory. In a mill.
As a child, too. It's devastating. But
obviously workers' rights probably could still go a long ways, but even the fact we have a lunch break and you're required to make sure that people take breaks and that children can't work past certain hours.
Child labor laws.
These are all very good things.
And they're all a direct result from strikes like this that happened during the Industrial Revolution. So
definitely.
It's incredible.
And the next one is another pretty big one. This is the Russian women's strike. And this was a group of women in Petrograd, Russia, launched a strike over bread shortages. Bread was a major trigger, you guys.
Yeah, literally.
People did not have enough food, and that was a disaster. But it quickly ignited a mass uprising and ultimately led to the fall of the Tsarist regime, marking the beginning of the Russian Revolution. Who would have thought that women yelling about not having enough food would lead to 2 major revolutions in history?
Yeah.
Though it's traditionally seen as a worker-led movement, it was women who were factory laborers, students, peasants, and even upper-class women who first took to the streets shouting for bread and saying down with the Tsar. Their protest soon swelled as men joined in, and the unrest escalated into looting, clashes with the police, large-scale demonstrations, including one on a frozen river. And then just a month later, the newly formed provisional government granted women the right to vote, which made Russia the second country in the world to do so. This pivotal moment helped establish March 8th as a global symbol of women's political power. That's another reason why March 8th is International Women's Day.
So cool, yeah.
Yeah, and so it continues to gain international traction following the Russian Revolution. Apparently, other communist countries like China and Cuba also adopted International Women's Day, which is Interesting, but good to celebrate women. Then it has global recognition. By the mid-20th century, women across continents from Europe to Australia to the Americas used March 8th to demand suffrage, better working conditions, and gender equality, transforming it into a worldwide day of protest, solidarity, and progress. Continues on International Women's Day. I feel like it's that yearly check-in of, okay, do we need
What's
to do
going on?
something?
Are we good? Are we happy?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
But yeah, they were worried about feeding the children of the defenders of the motherland, top up the soldiers' family rations, defend the freedom of the people in peace. That was all of the things. And it ended up driving out the czars completely. Which, man, a czar is such a fun word. Down with the czar.
You know what? When coming up with your political slogans.
Yeah. I feel like
That's
down
so
with the
funny.
president doesn't have the same ring to it.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Not at all. This next one is the South African Women's March that happened in 1956. So, on August 9th of 1956, more than 20,000 women of all races marched to the Union buildings in Pretoria, South Africa, in a protest against the apartheid government's oppressive laws, which restricted the movement of Black South Africans and required them to carry identification documents at all times. It was organized primarily by the Federation of South African Women, also known as FSAW, and the march was a landmark movement in South African resistance. These women silently delivered petitions bearing thousands of signatures to Prime Minister J.G. Stritjom's office. I think that's how you would say his last name.
Yeah.
After standing in defiant silence for 30 minutes, they broke into song, which is translated to, like, you strike a woman, you strike a rock, which was a phrase that would become a symbol for women's resilience. And this Women's March remains one of the most significant anti-apartheid demonstrations in South African history and continues to be commemorated annually on National Women's Day, honoring the critical role that women played in the struggle for freedom and equality in South Africa, which is really amazing.
It's really amazing. If you are not entirely sure, apartheid just means segregation, which is like a more common phrase we use in the United States. Next one is pretty famous, and I feel like it actually has gained a lot of traction, especially recently as people have been talking about different protest efforts and stuff. I heard a lot about it on International Women's Day. The Icelandic women's strike in 1975. And this was in October. 90% of Icelandic women, 90%.
That's so much of them.
I know.
That's incredible.
So they participated in a nationwide strike called a Women's Day Off. And the whole idea was protesting wage inequality, gender-based discrimination, both in paid employment and domestic labor, which is hardly ever recognized. Organized by women's groups and widely publicized through national media, the strike aimed to demonstrate the indispensable role that women played in Icelandic society. And I will add, in every society, literally. Women refused to go to work, cook, clean, care for the children, and it ended up shutting down schools, shops, and fish factories completely.
Wow.
In Reykjavik, I think is how you say it. Forgive me if I am not good at my Icelandic. 25,000 women, which was over 10% of the entire population, gathered for a rally to demand change. The protest, dubbed the Long Friday, had an immediate and lasting impact. The following year, Iceland passed a law guaranteeing equal rights for men and women. And 5 years later, they actually were able to elect the first female president of their country. The strike inspired similar actions globally, including Poland's Black Monday, the International Women's Strike, and continues to influence Icelandic activism today. I think they actually have it as a holiday, like Women's Day Off, and it's a vacation day for women where they don't have to do anything.
Bravo. Bravo.
Their
Iceland.
national holiday, which I would love that.
It's amazing.
Yeah, no housework, no child rearing, you don't have to go into work, like you don't do crap. And everyone says, thank you so much. We appreciate you.
That is so incredible. Be able to get 90% of your population to participate in something.
I'm like 90% of the female population, but that is huge to have that many people agreeing that something needed to change.
That's what I was just thinking. Like, I feel like, for one thing, it'd be very difficult in America because, like, size-wise, that's difficult. But
we're
also,
freaking huge.
like, how many women still would be unwilling to call themselves feminists? You know what I mean? Like, I just don't even think we could get that many people to agree.
Our
Which is
country
crazy.
is so divided. It's tragic, honestly.
Yeah.
And I'm jealous of a lot of these like little countries that are able to do that. No offense to any like little countries, but our country is freaking ginormous.
Yeah, like
It's
geographically, we
ridiculous.
just cover a lot of
Yeah.
places and so many different cultures.
Like
as
I can't get
well.
out of my state in a day. Maybe I could.
True.
I think it would take a full,
You'd have to drive probably 7 or 8 hours
before I
south
would
to
even
get out
be
of
out
Utah.
of Utah. That's
3 to
not
4
possible.
hours north. So that's
Yep.
crazy.
I know. And to reach the edge, I think it takes me 12 hours, and that would be going to California, which would be the closest like
Yep.
route to actually getting to like where the water is impossible. But I think it's an important thing to remember that maybe statewide, this could be a possibility for a lot of places that could actually make a difference. States still can pass laws for
Absolutely. Anyways, this next one is the Liberian women's sex strike, which shout out to that previously talked about Greek play. So this is in 2003. So the Women of Liberia Mass Action for Peace was a grassroots movement led by Christian and Muslim women who united in 2003 to protest Liberia's brutal civil war and demand an end to violence. Amid a conflict that saw over 200,000 deaths, rampant sexual violence, child soldier recruitment, and just the displacement of thousands, these women organized nonviolent demonstrations to pressure both President Charles Taylor and also rebel forces into peace negotiations. Dressed in white and gathering daily at fish markets, visible from the president's residence, the women prayed, sang, held signs, and even initiated a sex strike to draw attention to their cause. Their persistence led to a formal meeting with Taylor and later a sit-in outside peace talks in Ghana, where they blocked delegates from leaving until progress was made.
Oh my
When threatened
gosh.
with arrest, leader Lama Gabawi famously threatened to strip, a powerful cultural act of shame that halted police intervention.
Man.
Their actions, alongside mounting international pressure, of course, led to Taylor's resignation, a peace agreement, and eventually Liberia's first democratic elections in 2005. The women's movement played a crucial role in ending the war and reshaping Liberia's future, proving the transformative power of non-violent female-led resistance.
That's amazing. I would love to be able to sit outside a room and force politicians to agree on something before we let them leave.
I know, right?
Oh,
I
that
just
is
love
so
that
amazing.
visual so much. It's so funny.
And all dressed in white. Powerful about that.
Absolutely.
This next one is called Ni Uno Menos, and they were protests primarily in Argentina, but throughout the rest of Latin America in 2015. And what happened is, I didn't know the exact circumstances, but a 14-year-old pregnant girl was killed by her boyfriend. And then there was also a very public case of rape of a 16-year-old. And they happened very close together, I think, within a short amount of time. And so hundreds of thousands of women throughout Argentina took to the streets to protest the country's epidemic of gender-based violence. The movement rallied around the slogan, Ni Uno Menos, which means not one less, which was a call to end femicide and honor the lives of women lost to violence, which, is a horrible thing that doesn't just happen there. It's everywhere. Literally, the top cause of death for pregnant women is homicide. That's really fun. But even though it started as like a hashtag, it quickly grew into a nationwide and later international movement, bringing together women from all walks of life in massive demonstrations demanding justice, protection, and systematic change. The protest led to the creation of a national femicide registry and sparked wider conversations across Latin America about misogyny, domestic abuse, and state inaction. Ni Unos Menos has since become a symbol of resistance across borders, echoing through feminist movements from Mexico to Spain, and reinforcing the power of collective outrage to fight for women's safety and dignity.
Amazing.
Honestly, rape should be considered a hate crime, right?
Also have much higher consequences.
I agree.
Bring back cruel and unusual punishment for rapists.
No, I'm serious.
If you're going to be cruel and unusual to people, I don't know. I just think
It's so horrific. I literally, like serial rapists who continually to go and rape women over and over again, it should be considered a hate crime because then the sentence in prison is longer.
Which is crazy. I'm
Yes.
not here to advocate against. I'm glad that hate crimes are taken very seriously. Of
Yeah.
course. But that is crazy.
But
that
it's
it
like
would be
a hate
dismissed.
crime is any act of violence or opposition to a specific demographic of people.
Yeah,
If you're always targeting women,
true.
congratulations, you hate women.
It is very true.
So messed up.
This next one is the Poland abortion protest that happened so recently in 2016 and 2020, which actually, wow, 2016 is almost 10 years ago.
I
I'm
know.
fine.
I was literally thinking about that and being like, oh, yeah, that was literally a couple years ago. And it was like, oh, no, Stauney.
no.
That was a year after you graduated from high school.
But still, recent history. This is October 2016 that Polish women launched the Black Protest in response to a proposed total ban on abortion that would criminalize the procedure even in cases of rape, incest, or severe fetal abnormalities. Wearing black is a symbol of mourning. Tens of thousands of women across this country participated in nationwide walkouts, marches, and demonstrations culminating in Black Monday on October 3rd. The protest, organized under the banner, which is just Women's Strike translated into Polish, marked a turning point in Polish feminist activism and successfully pressed the government to withdraw the bill. But then in October 2020, Poland's constitutional tribunal ruled that abortion in cases of abnormality was unconstitutional, effectively enacting a near total ban. This ruling reignited mass protests across the country, where women once again at the forefront using the same symbols and slogans such as "This is war," and expanding their demands to include broader critiques of authoritarianism, the Catholic Church's influence, and gender inequality. And these protests became the largest in Poland since the fall of communism, reaffirming the enduring power of women-led resistance and its ability to shape national policy and also just global solidarity.
I know that abortion can be a polarizing topic for a lot of people. Just a
Mhm.
reminder that like it is a medically necessary procedure in a lot of cases, and blanket laws that ban it cause more women to die. I feel like that's a thing that a lot of people don't realize, is that it's like people die when abortions
Yeah.
are outlawed.
This thing, like, of course, I understand that this is a very personally heavy topic to consider, but a full ban, he said, it's dangerous. It can be very dangerous.
Yeah, sadly, like rules aren't really black and white anymore. Our world's a little too complicated for that. So it's just,
Mhm.
it's not safe. And that's why women were so against it.
Absolutely.
This one happened in 2019 and is commonly known as the Women's Wall of Kerala, Vanitha Mathil, I think is the translation of it. And it was a 620-kilometer human chain formed solely by women across India on January 1st of 2019 to promote gender equality, protest gender discrimination, and support the Supreme Court's 2018 ruling allowing women of all ages to enter the Sambamala temple. Apparently, before the Supreme Court ruled that all women could enter, they wouldn't allow women who were, I think, pregnant or menstruating to enter the temple, because I wasn't entirely sure. Like, some things were like, oh, because menstruation is unclean, but then other things were like, no, that wasn't really it. Or actually, no, it wasn't just menstruating or pregnant. It was women of any age where they were fertile. So literally from 12 to when you have menopause.
Hello. Yeah, that's like most of your life.
Yeah,
period?
The majority of a woman's life, yes.
Yeah.
And I could be saying that wrong, but that was the thing that I
Okay.
got, was when women were fertile, especially when they were on their period, they were not allowed to enter the temple, which is a major part of their religion. So obviously women were totally all for allowing women into the temple, no longer allowing this gender discrimination. So it involved 3 to 5 million participants,
That's
making it the
crazy.
world's fourth largest human chain and the largest formed exclusively by women.
Wow.
I really wish I could have seen that.
That's incredible.
The event, organized by the Kerala state government, led by Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan, was, of course, like I said, the traditional temple ban, and then the political religious controversy following the court's decision. So a lot of people were very upset about the Supreme Court's decision, and this was an event in support. And supportive events of similar nature, but not quite as big, were also held in cities like New Delhi, Mumbai, and Chennai.
Dang, I need to read more about this because I'm just so intrigued. Like, how would you prove if you were or were not menstruating? Like,
I
how would
wish
anyone know?
I could get like a clearer answer. From just the little bit I read, I couldn't tell if it was like only when you were menstruating or
Yeah,
if
but
it was
also, how would they know?
I don't know. But then also there were some things where it was like women of a certain age weren't able to. So then I was like, they just not let women during any of the ages that they're fertile. So yeah, I like
need to do a
couldn't
deep
get a
dive into
clear.
this. This seems very interesting.
Yes. And I'm like, and I don't know enough about the religion. But like it literally said, oh, traditionally barred women between the ages of 10 and 50. Literally
Okay.
like the entire time you're menstruating.
Wow. That's how they can tell if you are or not. They just say, yeah, if you could possibly be.
Gosh,
You're not
I didn't
allowed
even
in.
menstruate until 14. That's 4
That's
years.
crazy.
4. Oh gosh. Yeah, that's crazy.
This last one, we'll talk about some other things, but the last one I'm going to talk about, this is just from as recent as 2022, which is the Mahsa Amini protest. So in 2022, a wave of women-led protests swept across Iran after the death of Mahsa Amini, which we talked about this too when this happened. But
Yeah.
this was a 22-year-old Kurdish Iranian woman who died in custody after being arrested by Iran's morality police for allegedly wearing her hijab improperly. Her death ignited widespread outrage, I think international outrage as well, that sparked a movement that quickly spread beyond just the questions of dress code to also just challenge the state's oppression of women and ethnic minorities, period. In a very bold act of defiance, Iranian women removed and burned their headscarves, cut their hair in public, and marched in the streets chanting "Women like freedom," a slogan that came to symbolize resistance not only against forced veiling, but against the broader authoritarian regime. Despite facing brutal crackdowns, arrests, and executions even, women and youth sustained the movement, which became one of the most significant uprisings in Iran since the 1979 revolution. Protests erupted not only across Iran, but just globally, with solidarity demonstrations in cities around the world. And the Iranian government responded with just really brutal crackdowns. Like I said, it resulted in lots of arrests and even like executing, but it's often described as one of the most significant challenges to Iran's regime since the 1979 revolution. And in 2023, Time magazine named the women of Iran as Heroes of the Year. And this woman, Mahsa Amini, was also honored posthumously with several human rights awards as well.
Yeah.
So this has gotten a lot of recognition. It's obviously a horrible tragedy, but women were able to rise up together and bring a lot of awareness to something that very much needs to change.
That one, ugh, gosh, always breaks my heart every time I remember it. It was such a big thing, but like such an injustice.
Yeah.
The last thing I want to mention, this has been like a social media trend. Have you seen anything about the 4B movement?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. So it's becoming a little bit of a thing in the United States as well due to the re-election of Donald Trump and the rollback on reproductive rights, like Roe v. Wade, all of that stuff. But the 4B movement emerged in South Korea between 2017 and 2019. And it's short for 4 different phrases, and I'm probably going to butcher them, so I'm sorry. But it's Bihon, Bicholsen, Biyone, and Biseksu, I think. It's a radical feminist campaign. So that's first off. It's radical. I will say that. Like, it actually has an association with an extremely misandric and trans-exclusionary website, WOMAD, which obviously we don't agree with that. We are not misandrists, so we are not trans-exclusionary. But because it's gaining traction, I wanted to talk about it. Basically, those 4 words calls for no marriage, no childbirth, no dating, and no sex with men. Like literally cutting all of it out in protest. And it was rooted in Korea's digital feminist spaces and obviously shaped by earlier movements like we talked about Me Too, and then also this other movement called Escape the Corset that happened in 2016 in South Korea. And it was like a protest against the country's rigid and oppressive beauty standards. South Korea is one of the top countries for cosmetic surgery, makeup. They talk a lot about Korean skincare routines, like anti-aging, hyper-feminine fashion. All of that is very embedded in South Korea's culture and economy. And that was one of the things where people were rebelling against beauty standards, and then that led into the 4B movement. But one of the things that gained major momentum behind it were the 2016 murder of a woman in Seoul by a man who claimed he acted out of resentment towards women.
Wow.
And then South Korea's birth rate dropped to one of the lowest in the world. And women cited economic insecurity, lack of career support, unequal domestic burdens as reasons why they were rejecting traditional family roles. And then it's still considered like fringe and controversial even within Korea because of a lot of its radical associations. But it has gotten a lot of renewed global attention just last year and this year among U.S. women protesting the re-election of Donald Trump and the rollback of reproductive rights, like I said. So even though it's like a very extreme stance, very exclusive, the movement highlights broader frustrations about gender depression, continues to spark dialogue about autonomy, resistance, and feminist ideals. So if you see it, there actually are a lot of women who are jumping on the bandwagon of this whole thing and basically saying that they will not marry, birth any children, date, or have sex with any men. And I've seen also addendum on this that voted for Trump or that support. I guess they don't want to punish the But I have seen a lot of things like that.
A lot of people talking about that. Yeah.
I saw like a blind date show where they like brought up two people from the audience and they had like their whole back and forth questioning, and then the girl got to ask a last question and she said, "Who did you vote for?" And he said, "I voted for the Trump cabinet," which was funny because come on, dude, it doesn't say Donald Trump's cabinet on the ballot. You voted for Donald Trump. And she said, "Okay, I'm good. I don't want to go on a date with you." And he was like, "Okay." And then it's been other instances like that. They had another thing with a guy comes in and the girls all have balloons and they pop them if they don't want to date him.
Oh, yeah, I think I've seen this.
And he was like, "Oh, I believe in conservative values and traditional family roles." And literally all of the girls popped the balloons and they were like, "Okay, bye."
Also, okay, another thing I'm going to say about that, all right?
Yeah.
The whole like, I want conservative values. I'm like, okay, cool. Then that your wife can't have a job then. Do you know that means, what, are you going to make the money then? Like, I feel like the same men who are like conservative, like family values are also the ones that are like, oh, why do the guys have to pay for every date? That is your belief system, buddy. I hate to break this to you.
No, they're like, "Oh, we need to split the check. I'm not going to open the door for you. All of this for me and have a job so you can pay half the rent." It's congratulations. That's no longer conservative.
Congratulations. You have very progressive views on how couples should behave with one another.
And then the fact that you believe all childcare and
it's
housework
conservative
also.
values when that means that you don't have to do much in your life.
Yeah. And it's hurtful, like, honestly, because growing up Christian, I still am a Christian. It's sad to have an entire belief system that's supposed to be about loving one another and working together as a family unit and like having a community turn into this like trigger phrase for, "Oh, I'm racist." You know,
I'm going to be horrible to my future wife. It's cool.
It was like, that's literally nowhere in the Bible. I don't know where you found that one. Okay.
Like bold.
Yeah.
Sure,
and
whatever you say.
It's scary. Like, it's really frightening. A lot of, I
think so.
The male loneliness epidemic and how it's leading to less men are getting married. So then they're falling into more radical politics like Andrew Tate and Ben Shapiro and all these people who hate women. Like, they hate them.
They hate women.
And they sit there and harp about how the family unit is the most important thing. And then they date OnlyFans models and then complain that all girls are hoes. And it's, dude, and I don't think OnlyFans models are hoes, just saying. But it's so hypocritical of them because they'll insult women who do sex work and then that's all that they date. And then they're like, "Oh, no one can get married these days."
No one can get married. It's okay. First off, go try being nice to a woman.
Yes.
I dare you. And it really just sends me in a
whole,
tailspin.
like, "I'm an alpha male" thing. And it's like, what does that even mean?
That's what, I mean, we've talked about this before where like we've joked about the fact that like the people that we grew up with, they didn't like women. They just liked other boys.
Yeah.
This reoccurring thing where men aren't trying to, they're proving their masculinity for other men, because if they truly were doing it to impress women, it's just listen to any woman in your life and they will tell you what to do to find a wife and a woman.
Yes.
And you're like, "Oh, it's impossible." It's no, because all you're concerned on is for showing off for other men. Like,
I'm like, I'm sorry. I've met a lot of women in my life. I'll tell you. They are some of the most forgiving, loving, acceptable people ever. Like, I've never seen a woman judge her boyfriend for losing his hair. Like, it's not a thing. And maybe there's some women that are like that, but the majority of women, I just don't believe are actually that concerned
They just want a good, loving
Yeah.
partner that they can build a good, beautiful life with and feel supported.
That treats them
Hello?
with respect and like
Respect.
understands them. And gosh, I've seen quotes from these men with podcasts where they were talking about how they don't think women should orgasm, that it's unnatural. Like, okay, weird
You know
way
what?
to out
That's
yourself.
they're telling them themselves. And I've never done that. It's unnatural. It's
Or them saying like
embarrassing.
female anatomy is disgusting. And then it's, dude, maybe you considered that maybe you're just gay.
Like, that's okay. Maybe
Yeah.
actually not sexually attracted to women.
And maybe you
Oh.
need to work through that instead.
Yeah.
It's insane. And like, I don't know, these stories are so inspiring in so many ways. I wish I had the bravery to just, but I don't even know where to go.
Yeah.
Like, where do
That's
I go protest all of this? I'm like,
One things
I
that
don't
like
know.
I've seen people on TikTok talk about no buying days and like this and
Yes,
this, but I
that's
do
true.
think that can be cool. That can be good. But it's something that I've seen people talk about in response to that is the concept of no buying day and all of these things. They have worked in the past, but the reason why they worked in the past is because there was like an agreement to not change anything until standards were met. And so it became a little bit easier to then cause change. So
Yeah.
say, oh, all these people are not going to buy something for one day. What is that really going to do? But if a group of people say, no, I'm not going to buy something until this changes, and then you're going to really make sure that you are working in your communities, whether that's like online or in person, to
Yeah.
actually make sure it has enough support and saying, okay, these are the terms that we're going to start with and that we're not going to buy. You do have to be willing to sacrifice an incredible amount sometimes to participate in these political movements if you want to see legitimate change. I'm not here coming on this pedestal of I'm holier than thou. I haven't actively participated in it, but I do think it's an important thing to consider when you're seeing all of this talk of no buy day this, no buy day that. What impact actually is potential here? And if you want change, you have to be willing to make changes. And I think something that like I've just started to do, at least in my own life, is just, okay, I'm going to be a lot more intentional about where I put my money. I'm going to be a lot more intentional about what and we've talked about this a lot, of who I'm giving my money to as much as I can. And also, what am I consuming? How much of everything am I doing?
Definitely.
And here in America, I think that's how we really vote, right? Is with our dollars.
And like,
So
if you
that
can't
can be
see
a start of it.
If you can't see yourself living without Target or Amazon or Walmart or something, maybe a no-buy day is a great start.
Exactly.
Can I go a day without this? Can I go a week without this? Possible for me to restructure the way that I consume things.
And it's very privileged to be able to even take that time to say, I'm spending too much money. And then to also say, and I'm not going to shop at convenience stores. There's a lot of layers to this that, of course, need to be considered.
And like, there's no way that any of us can just stop buying gas.
Well, yeah, of course. Like,
I wish. Our
We
public
do have
transportation
to-
system sucks. Like, we're just not there.
yeah.
But yeah, I think find small ways. It makes me hopeful every day when I wake up and Tesla stock is dropping still.
No, but exactly. Like, people are selling their car. Like, there's certain status or things you can purchase that definitely sends messages. So be aware of messages that you're sending with your purchases. I think that's important to consider.
Yeah, definitely.
Support
and hopefully,
local when you can.
And hopefully we can make it all out of this better, united as a group, and
We're
we're able to see each other as humans rather than every other label we throw on each other.
minimum.
It's like, can you just look at me and recognize that I'm an individual human being? That's literally all I've asked.
I think that's a great place to start.
Yeah.
But
Anyway.
Yes. Thank you for joining us for another episode of March Madness. We love March. We love Women's History Month, of course. So thanks for being here. Come say hi on YouTube. We're almost to 300 subscribers. So come be our 300th one if we haven't already hit there. And come say hi
Also,
on everything else.
1,500 on Instagram.
We did hit 1,500
Which was a
on
big deal,
Instagram.
you guys. We're
Yes.
happy to have you. More of you are, of course, welcome. And don't forget to check out the merch, the Hysterical Society.
Absolutely.
Be ungovernable and angry and mad. We've got one more episode coming your way.
Yes. We'll see you then.
Bye.
Bye.